TNKR Media.
Welcome to Inspiring Entrepreneurs Montreal. It's our 15th season showcasing stories from outstanding business people presented by BDO Canada. My name is Dan Delmar along with Mike Newton of BDO. Mike, finally, nice to see you again.
Great to be back together again, Dan.
And this week on the show, we're going to talk a lot about our core issues, leadership. We'll talk a bit about hybrid workplace, and that's a big feature on the program today, hybrid environment, but for learning. EdTech is the subject today on the program, and Sarah Seddiki will join us from Teameo. They do education technology and classroom management. So institutions like colleges and schools have this integration to make the Microsoft Teams environment a lot more pleasant and a lot more productive on their students. So Sarah talks about that today.
Yeah, it should be very interesting. Again, another young Montreal entrepreneur. It's great to have her here, and I think it's a very interesting platform. I mean, you look at, I think EdTech is still kind of evolving in most of our minds at this point. We still see it as a very old institutional type environment. So it's great to see the tech and the various platforms finally coming together.
We'll also talk a bit about leadership and managing leadership with Giuliana Papandrea, Senior Manager of Business Services at BDO Canada, later in the program. But first, let's get to our news and notes. And we do want to start a bit on a serious note to start again this week, Mike. Last week on the program with Euros, I was mentioning my advice for business owners in terms of their business communications. If entrepreneurs or even managers, executives, or employees, if they really feel the need to speak out about the Israel-Palestine conflict, the Ukraine-Russia conflict, or any around the world, doing so in a calm, civilized, and productive manner is super important. So my number one rule for broadcasting political opinions is no stereotyping, which is based on the Canadian Charter. And I wrote that blog on our website, tnkr.ca. You can check that out. But you sent me this article, Mike, and another pretty important point in terms of what to do action-wise. This is from Inc.com. And another PR executive here named Tony D'Angelo weighs in, and he says, well, make it something that has an impact, but that also doesn't offend either side, right? So they suggest efforts to support employees that can make more of an impact than pledges of solidarity on LinkedIn, for instance. So donations to humanitarian relief efforts can show a commitment to peace and human welfare. Interesting perspective, and I agree with it. I agree with the productivity aspect of it. But Mike, in this polarized age, even advocating for peace and humanitarian aid might actually get you some flack online. So leaders not only have to be able to put out the civilized messages, they have to recognize and receive the flack and ignore it sometimes when it's unreasonable, if you're putting out a message that's generally tolerant.
Yeah, look, there's no right way to address this. You're always, unfortunately, in today's world, I think you're always going to offend somebody based on the message. I think the important element here from a business angle, and again, we're looking at this from a business, is are you taking a political stance or are you looking at doing this from a business perspective? And are you looking to, what is the problem you're ultimately trying to solve by issuing a statement? Is this an internal message to your employees, to the team for support? Is this a public message to advise everybody, somewhere in terms of where you stand, not on the issue, but on how to address the humanity side of things? And, it's very interesting because for the last 2 weeks, I have done an awful lot of reading and an awful lot of trying to understand what is the right way to send the message. People have come across on the humanitarian angle only and have been flogged for not denouncing terrorism because it wasn't specifically stated in the statement. What we're starting to see are a lot of messages that are denouncing terrorism, supporting humanity in general, and then supporting the employees. And here's how we're going to help our employees, whether it is going to be through messages, whether it's going to be through open forum, and everything else. And I think you really cannot use, and this is a business owner perspective, is you should not necessarily be using it as as you mentioned, a stereotypical approach to dealing with things. We have to recognize that, in a recent U.S. study, over 60, close to 65% people still trust business owners and what they say and what they're proposing about 15 points more than what they trust comes out of the government's perspective. And I think there's a responsibility associated with all of that.
The other thing to keep in mind for leaders is you don't actually have to opine. You can help. You can provide services. You can check up on your employees if they're affected. You can exude empathy, and you can do all of that without providing your opinion. That's you don't have to post that thing. No one's forcing you to.
Yeah, the opinion pieces I really don't think have a place. I think it needs to be factually based. I think it needs to be a support scenario. I think the only one that's probably been relatively safe through all of this is denouncing terrorism itself. Everything else is going to come across as opinion, no matter how hard or how strong or how right it may be. It's still going to come across as an opinion.
One last point on this that I think is super important in terms of activist capital. Those who engage in it have to understand that when you do it, you're going to be expected by your audience to do it again and again. So why weigh in on conflict A if you're not weighing in on conflict B, right? So be prepared to be consistent in your messaging and to repeat it in other contexts as well, because you can't just kind of waltz in and waltz out in terms of your social implication. It's a major decision that a company has to make, and it affects operations.
100%. I mean, the reality of the moment you only opine on one subject, what have you become? Now it's an opinion. No matter how you don't want it to be an opinion, it now becomes an opinion. So the reality is if you're going to step out there and you're going to provide an information on any topic, whether it's this subject, this delicate subject, whether it's on leadership, to just jump out there and make a statement and then jump back and never go there again is almost flavor of the week mentality, and it's a very dangerous place to be.
I want to briefly ask you about the hybrid workplace scenario, Mike, and where offices are at around Montreal, around Canada. It's our ongoing issue. You're more in office. I'm more hybrid. How has the adjustment been over the last few months since we last spoke about this? Are we leaning more? I guess we're leaning more back to being in office now.
I'm not sure there's been much movement in the way of adjustment at this point. I think philosophically the points have started to change. I'm not necessarily seeing the numbers supporting that. A lot of people are very reticent to take a hardline stance on I need you in the office 3 days, 2 days, 1 day, whatever it is. And partially because in certain industries, and ours is a perfect example, the moment you take a position, one of your competitors is going to say, well, we're not going to make you do that since we're all fighting for talent and we're still playing that talent war game. Ultimately, at the end of the day, anything that I'm going to go out and say, or one of our leaders is going to go out and say, we want you back here 3 days a week. Somebody else is going to say, hey, we'll let you work from home 5 days a week. And all of a sudden, they now have a competitive advantage in the advertising. So it's still, we're seeing it. I think we'll continue to see more of a position from the larger institutional environments. But anybody who's still playing in kind of that public space and fighting for staff, which I think most people are these days still, it's still a bit of a quagmire.
Still a lot of staffing challenges that I'm hearing from my clients, and a lot of shifts one way and the other, and some, according to HBR, Harvard Business Review, interesting piece, are switching jobs and then this is going back to their jobs because they missed the old one. What's the etiquette there? I mean, can you go back to your old job? How do you approach the subject?
So I love this article. I love this article because of the boomerang effect of leaving and going back, and a lot of times years before COVID, you left for an opportunity, or you left for what was perceived greener grass. Post COVID, people were leaving for, I guess, the flavor of the week in many things, and how that was affecting them. Can you go back? Of course, you can always go back. But my first question is going to be, how did you leave? Right? I mean, if you left on good terms, if you've left in a professional environment, if you gave your employer proper notice and you did everything, then in most cases, if you were a good employee, then the door is still going to be open. If you slammed it shut when you walked out, I got a better opportunity and this is what they're paying me and I don't need you anymore, I'm just going to remind you not to bother to reapply. So I think it really is a professionalism component here. When you're going to go back, I mean, if you're deciding to go back, why did you leave in the first place? So it's a lot of those, what ifs and whys did you leave in the first place, and how did you leave in the first place, and how did you leave people behind when you go there? I mean, if you left, what was your reason? And if it becomes, let's say it was a personal reason, I don't want to work the hours. You're going to make me work from the office. I want to work remotely. All of a sudden, I move somewhere else. There's nothing wrong with putting your tail between your legs and saying, you know what? Maybe I left for the wrong reason and going back to an employer based on that. The one thing you've got to recognize, though, is the moment you come back, there is in the back of a few people's minds the possibility that you are going to leave again. And you need to rebuild that trust, and you need to rebuild that environment that allows people to think that you're not just going to go either hot-headed one day and quit or move away from things. So I think there's as much as the employer has to want you back, I think you need to want to go back, and I think you need to look in the mirror and assess, why did I leave, and why do I want to go back? Am I going back for the right reasons?
Real quick story here at the end. The founder and CEO of Thrive, Arianna Huffington, formerly of the Huffington Post, her newest campaign now is to squelch the worldwide burnout epidemic, starting with the way that we work. One thing that I found interesting about this story, I think she's suggesting something that I really am into, which is scheduling downtime and your rest time within the workday.
Yeah, it's as you can see, I'm stumbling on that one because it's something I'm not so good at doing at the end of the day. But I think you need to find individually what works for you. I mean, a lot of places went to, having the nap room. That was people's forced effort to chill. I think you can reset your mind in a brief moment. And I think it depends on, you need to know what works for you. And you need to find that if sitting down and doing a crossword puzzle for the New York Times crossword puzzle for 10 minutes happens to give you that decompression and gives you another 3 or 4 hours of energy, then there's nothing wrong with doing that. The 2-hour nap at your desk may be a little more problematic, but I do agree that the downtime, and you need to understand what works for you, and you're going to need to try a number of things in order for to see how that implication works as the day progresses.
Mike, please go up the street at one of our local bistros sometime next week and have a long lunch. You deserve it.
That one I don't necessarily have a problem with, that's food is that's
you
not
can do
good.
it, Mike. 90 minutes. I think you can do it.
Yeah, I know. The problem is most of the time when I do it, it's business related. So I'm going with, either a business development mind to just go and sit and have lunch for 90 minutes. Yeah, I haven't figured that one out yet. And I got to tell you, at 56 years old, there's not that much time left to figure that one out.
All right, we'll work on it. There's still hope.
Yes, that's what gets me up every morning.
Mike, let's get right to our guest, shall we? Her name is Sarah Seddiki. She's the co-founder of the EdTech company Teameo. Sarah, welcome to CJAD.
Thank you for inviting me.
So first question is the easiest. What is Teameo?
Well, Teameo is a connected learning environment that simplifies the digital experience for students and teachers in colleges and universities across North America.
Maybe just take a step here. EdTech, which maybe for some of our audience is not necessarily clear. What exactly is EdTech, and what market are you serving?
So EdTech is basically technology that helps like school organization. It can be like college. It can be like high school, etc. We focus mainly in universities and colleges. So it's really technologies that helps education.
That's a pretty broad statement. Why don't you drill that down a little bit and give us a little bit of an idea of what type of software capabilities that Teameo has?
Perfect. So basically, we started with a problem that we started seeing in colleges, universities, and school in general. We saw that a lot of technology emerged, but then it was always the student and the teacher that has to adapt to technology. So there were such complexity that we're like profoundly believing that teachers and students, they shouldn't adapt to technology. Technology should adapt to them to really serve them. So when we saw that, for example, school organization, they had multiple tools, like they had, for example, a collaboration tools and LMS and all those different tools, but all those tools, because they were not firstly connected together, they were not speaking together, they were not like making sense altogether. Well, they started confusing teachers and students, and that's the first thing that we realized. And they started doing things en doublon. I don't know how we say it in English, but doing this in this platform, doing this in this platform. So we really simplified the digital environment. And after that, we started adding feature to really make the digital experience simple and easy, what we really believe it should be. So I know it can be a little bit of a broad definition about what we do, but we connect software together and then we simplify the interfaces and simplify what the student and the teacher do on a daily basis.
So if I'm looking at this as a relative novice, I'm going to say that your software kind of sits like an umbrella and all of the various pieces or a spoken hub type mentality, right? Where all the pieces go through that now allow them to all talk to each other so that no matter, where you are in the platform and what platform you're using, you're not doubling up on the work.
Yeah, exactly. That's the mission that we have. Basically, now, as for now, we're using Microsoft Team. So what we're doing is we're connecting. So we're an umbrella and we're bringing everything into Microsoft Teams. So when you open Microsoft Team, you have access to like a lot of apps and website and software only by opening Microsoft Teams, and you can see like everything and personalized to the user if you're a student or a teacher. This is the first part of what we do. And then the other part is we're going to simplify, for example, class management. We're going to simplify your digital agenda. We're going to simplify other aspects. And because we're having this umbrella.
Sarah Seddiki joins us from Teameo. I have a features question because I'm looking at some of your features here on the website, and it seems like you're digitalizing some of those classic classroom problems, including attendance management, which I think is interesting. Are you solving some of those issues that used to be, I guess, a pain for teachers?
Yes, exactly. So, for example, you have to know that Microsoft Teams is free for education. So basically, Microsoft offer license to all schools around the world for free. So schools started using Teams, but then for the attendance, they had to take the attendance and get in the other software, put the attendance there, etc., etc. Now we do it like automatically. So basically, we will take the attendance automatically and we'll send it to their SIS, etc. So the teacher can focus on what really matters, teaching, and not doing like all the admin stuff that most of the time is not so inspiring for them.
So how do you bring together platforms that may not be Microsoft friendly? I'm sure there's a lot of schools that have not, completely converted over to a Microsoft platform. How much of the work is done by you? How much of the work is done by them? And maybe give us just a bit of an idea of how that integration works and how you work with the schools.
So basically, it takes approximately a week or two to implement Teameo for a school organization that uses Microsoft Teams. For now, we are mainly focused on school organization that uses Microsoft Teams or that want to use it. So that's what we're focusing on, and we have a big pool of organization that does. This is our main focus, but then we will be drifting and opening new integration for example, Google or other tools. But this is the main tool that we're integrating as for now.
I don't want to be a numbers geek, but sales have climbed dramatically, I guess, for you in the last little while. You finally broken into the U.S., I guess, with some impact. How is that changing the way the organization is structured, and how is it changing how you're going to market at this point?
So Canada and the US have similarities, but they do have a lot of things that is not actually different. So the similarities, I would say, what I like about the US is the way we can conduct business. So people in the US are most of the time very open-minded to innovation. So it's pretty easy to do business with them. What's a little bit more hard is in Canada, for example, people knew us before we started Teameo because we were working in school organization and helping them do some things. And when you arrive in the US, you're like a no one kind of thing. So you really, really, really have to prove yourself 10 times more. But once you do, then when they start adopting and they like what they see, they're really easy to recommend to other colleges or universities. So that's a little bit about what I feel is different. In terms of structure of the team is the same. We're very lucky, extremely lucky here in Quebec because we speak French, but we also speak, a lot of us speak English. So this was not an issue. Maybe it would have been an issue if we would have gone to Brazil and then we would have had to hire like people speaking Portuguese or, but yeah, as for the structure of the team, we're the same.
So let's take a little walk down memory lane. I mean, you started this how long ago? And I mean, other than you saw this vision, there's had to have been something. Was it personal frustration? Was it commentary from people you were going to school with? What drove and got this started for you?
So before Teameo, we were a consulting firm. We were specializing in Microsoft products. So this is not something absolutely new in that specialty. So doing consulting, and we were doing it for like banks or other big corporation or medium corporation. But then we had the opportunity to help the colleges. And when we had this opportunity, I think all our team felt compelled. We kind of all liked the fact that we're going to help a college, we're going to help students, we're going to have an impact. So that's why we started doing the consulting for the colleges. And this is where we found that, hey, we could do better. We could give a better experience for students, and for teacher, and we have the innovation DNA to do it. So that's how it started.
So it didn't come from your frustrations in school and saying, "Oh, I got to solve a problem." It came from what
It did. It did.
Okay.
It did. Everybody
Okay.
felt compelled because they all felt that they could be in that chair, and they were like, "Yeah, we
Okay.
could do something different for sure."
Really taking classrooms digitally to the next level, Sarah. And of course, this trend became very popular during the pandemic when we had to use these kinds of products. Looking forward in the future, what does the classroom of the future look like? Is it going to be always in person? Is it a hybrid environment? What's your bet?
I truly believe in an hybrid environment, and it's not because we now have digital classroom that it means we're all going to be remote and with our VR or something like that and disconnected from the world. We're still human and we need that human touch. However, sometimes in university or colleges, and I'm talking more about higher ed, so let's not talk about a high school, and I think this is a different aspect. So there were a lot of inefficiency. What I mean by that is, for example, some people were going to university, but they needed to work at the same time. So having to do 1 hour to go to, for example, the university and come back and to do that every day was not necessarily the best approach for them to learn. And a lot of university, even before the pandemic, were already understanding that. I'm thinking about Laval University, who was offering remote classes and hybrid classes and etc. So it's not something that happened with the pandemic. It's something that we felt they were in need way before the pandemic. The problem was the tool were not totally adapted for this reality. So the hybrid class is not something that it's new. It's just that now we want better tool to address this need.
So it brings up a really interesting question in terms of the experience at school, right? I mean, part of growing up is spending time in school, whether it's university, whether it's college, whatever that scenario is, and the remote component to it, and those people that graduated or spent a chunk of their university in the COVID environment feel like they were cheated out of the university experience. Is there a push anywhere in this exercise? Because they're almost counterintuitive to have the technology being so advanced and so good and so useful, almost deters people from going to class, almost deters people from being on site. How do you find a way to continue to have those work together? Because I agree with you. I think it will be hybrid, but hybrid represents a really broad spectrum. How do we find this, and where's the responsibility lie in terms of making this a proper way to proceed in high-level education?
So first of all, it's not because your class can be hybrid that every student were choosing the remote option. So I'm thinking about, again, Laval University, where we had like hybrid classes. You could come in class or stay online. And a lot of people were showing up in class because they felt it was a better way for them to learn. And other were like, hey, for me, it doesn't allow me to learn because, for example, I have transportation and I have kids and etc. So now we're bringing two type of people that have different needs. Some people, they do want to see a teacher in front of them. They do want to have this interaction, for example, and other people have other realities. Now we're bringing them together and be like, hey, we can answer to those two realities. So it's very important, and you will see in the studies and you will see in the future that a lot of people will still choose to come in class. It also help students that cannot go to class to also have access to education.
Yeah, I think it's a continuity of accessibility to people, right? At the end of the day, it's, we've looked at the some of it as a physical accessibility, some of it is a lifestyle accessibility, some of it is, just proximity accessibility. So I think there's good. I think the key to all of this, and sorry, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, lies in the melding of the education and the students finding what is a good experience. It seems like, COVID, because we were forced to shut down and go online, everybody jumped on this as the new bandwave of the future. Like, this is bandwagon of the future. This is where we're going. Like everything else, over a period of time, it seems to stretch itself out and find the natural balance. And I think that's where we're going. And I think that's where, when I look at technologies like you're bringing to the table here, is a huge opportunity for us to continue to find that balancing act when it comes to education. I mean, I guess it took a little bit of time to get this the technology up and running. Where did you start from? I mean, you said you had a consulting business going. Did you work from the base that you already had? And how much time did it take you from the time you guys decided to move in this direction to actually be implementable?
It's a good question. So first of all, Teameo is not only a platform that helps having better hybrid classes or online classes. What we want to do is simplify the digital classroom, simplify the digital experience. And we don't want to only simplify the hybrid classes. So what we want to do is for students to focus on what really matters, so learning, and teacher to focus on what really matters, teaching, without the complexity and the chaos of all this rising technology. That's really what we're doing. And this, yes, happens in the classroom with the virtual class. How can we simplify that? But we also simplify the digital agenda, who has nothing to do with, for example, the hybrid classes. For example, we simplify the attendance. So what we want is to remove the burden of this rising technology and the complexity of it, so it's simpler for everyone and people can enjoy their education journey.
Sarah Seddiki joins us from Teameo. And Sarah, what I do most of the time during the day is content strategy. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are from that perspective. How do you get engagement? We talk about engagement on social media in kind of, sketchy ways, but with your product, you want that engagement. You want people to absorb your content. How do you know that? Do you have mechanisms to evaluate if the students are doing better, perhaps, on your platform than they would in person? And how do you screen out cheating?
So basically, for that question, we decided to bring a human touch to it. So we went to colleges and we asked them, like, how is it going? Do you like it? What could we do different? And then they kind of helped us craft the product. And we're like, this button, we would love to have it more up and right. And the color is not bright enough. So we had a lot of feedback from the student. We had a lot of feedback from the teacher. And that's one of our favorite parts. So for that part. For the content strategy, so we really want to have an impact. So the first kind of content that we do is a content that can help and be relevant. So we love what we do, and we love to help students and teachers. So we've really focused on bringing relevant content for them. So to do thorough research to really bring them new what's happening, where it's going, etc. And they kind of look like they enjoy it.
And what about cheating? How do you make sure that no one is maybe using an AI or a bot to game the system?
It's we're having a project now. It's not unveiled, so but we're looking into that to see how we can help. But yes, this is going to be a new reality.
Sarah Seddiki, co-founder of Teameo Education and Classroom Management. Very interesting. Sarah, thank you so much. And you're going to stick around. We need your one piece of advice for inspiring entrepreneurs in a moment. But first, let's check in with our BDO specialist, Giuliana Papandrea, Senior Manager, Business Services at BDO Canada. And she's here to talk about leadership and teamwork and how to avoid some pitfalls there. Juliana, welcome back.
Thanks. It's great to be back in the studio again.
So we're gonna go today, Juliana. On I'm gonna say you're a woman after my heart, and normally people say that following food or entertainment or sports. You're going to talking about leadership, which is one of my favorite topics. Dan and I have discussed this in many occasions. But I think you're going to kind of drill it down a little bit to teams and how a little more specific advice other than that very kind of high level discussion. So what are some of the skills that you recommend a new leader adopts when they become? I mean, we all know that a really good leader makes a huge difference, as well as a really bad leader can make a huge difference. What are some of those skills that you see, and what are some that you're seeing missing?
So I narrowed it down to about five skills. And, everyone's always talking about how difficult it is to find talent, but what's even more important is retaining your current talent. So I think number one is be clear about your expectations and communicate. So, you have to make sure all your tasks are well defined and the priorities are set, and it helps everyone stay organized. Setting regular check ins with your staff members, making sure deadlines are reasonable and as opposed to the workload that they have already. And you have to be ready for changes. And the staff members have to be aware of these changes and the expectations you have. Things can change pretty quickly. We see it at our offices at BSO. The environment's constantly changing. Files are getting migrated to different online softwares, for efficiency. And so employees really need to be put up to date with all of these types of changes. Secondly, I think, don't be afraid to ask for input. As a leader, sometimes you're always expected to be giving input, but sometimes you have to ask for input from your staff members, and it's really important to make everyone part of the solution. So everyone's input makes them feel valued, and it shows that you're open-minded and you're open to suggestions. And basically, everyone has a common goal, and it's to be more efficient. So why not take the advice of other members when it comes to that? And you can share in the decision making responsibility as well.
Juliana, from a granular level, I mean, obviously, COVID and remote work has kind of thrown a bit of a wrench in the way we used to do some of this, right? I mean, those leadership, those first two skills that you're talking about were very, asking for communication, being there, looking for open things were so much easier when we're face to face. Do you find it now it's become more challenging, and are people starting to learn how to do this a little bit better now that we're, so far into the post-COVID era?
Well, the way we communicate has definitely changed. We were able to just go to our neighbor at the next desk and discuss and talk and ask questions. Now, we have to check the person's calendar. Are they online? Do they have time to talk? Do they have meetings? So it definitely has changed, but we really have to do our best to make that extra effort now to communicate, reach out to people, make sure, they're informed and they have all the information they need.
What should we be avoiding? I mean, obviously, there's a number of things in here that, uh, from a leadership perspective, need to be avoided. Some are different face to face than they would be on a remote basis.
So I think the most important is know when to talk and when to listen. When
Have you
people
been talking to
approach
my
you,
wife again?
oh my goodness, Mike. But it's such a common issue because as leaders, we sometimes have the tendency to, you know, kind of interrupt the conversation and give our input and our solution. But the best way is really to just understand when it's time to listen, let the person vent, let them discuss their issues at hand, and then help them find the solution rather than giving them the solution or giving them an order. So it's really a different type of approach.
So this sounds like
And
this sounds like a coaching session I recently attended,
exactly,
and
doesn't
I
it? And
and I got to tell you, I learned one thing. You know what that was? I'm not making it as a coach.
oh wow, that's funny. But another mistake that leaders make is they react urgently. They feel the impulse to react right away. And it's human nature. You want to get to the problem, you want to try to solve it right away. But sometimes doing that doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily, you haven't had the time to really reflect on what you should be, what the best solution would be. So it's always best to take some time and reflect. and not rush into the reaction.
Giuliana Papandrea, thanks so much, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thank you.
And as we come to the end of our show, let's ask our entrepreneur, Sarah Seddiki, co-founder of Teameo, for her one piece of advice for inspiring entrepreneurs. Sarah.
Well, so first of all, I'd say in Quebec and in Canada, I think we're one of the most luckiest entrepreneur in the world, as there's a lot of resource. You can Google it, you can ask around it, you can go to Santec or Lecan or accelerators, and you'll see there's so much resources that if you have the entrepreneur DNA, I believe, don't hesitate and go knock on door and ask for help, and people will help you with a big, big smile. So that's my first piece of advice. And the second is simply that if you don't know something, there's someone who knows it. So don't take 2 years or 3 years to figure out your marketing. Go ask for a consultant in marketing. If you don't have the money to go for a consultant in marketing, go for a friend that you know that is good in marketing, but don't try to learn it all by yourself. Really leverage people that you know, leverage your friend, leverage the accelerators. So, and that is, I think, one of the most precious piece of advice that I follow.
Super. Sarah Seddiki, co-founder of Teameo. Thanks so much, Sarah, and we appreciate your perspective. Mike, again, a great sign that Montreal is not only an AI tech capital, but EdTech specifically, not our first EdTech business on the show.
No, definitely not. And it's great to see. And we know when it comes to a lot of the ed tech or a lot of the technology, it's a much younger entrepreneur, and it's great to see that the future of Montreal and Quebec and Canada continues to shine with great new ideas. So it's always great to have guests like this and push forward in a market that I think is still really starting to evolve. I don't think ed tech for most of us is something that really we're used to yet. I think we still see higher level education in an old school world. So this continues to help.
And en plus, Sarah, you left the accent aigu on the American website as well. So as Quebecois, we appreciate that you're representing.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.
Next week on Inspiring Entrepreneurs by BDO Canada, we'll speak with, very excited for this, Fred Morin, chef, co-owner, co-founder of the Joe Beef Group, comprised of several iconic Montreal restaurants, including Vin Papillon, one of my favorites, and Vin Mon Lapin, which tops the prestigious Canada's 100 Best Restaurants list for 2023. Very much looking forward to that. A reminder, you can subscribe to Inspiring Entrepreneurs Montreal as a podcast on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, or your favorite platform, or log on to the website inspiringentrepreneursmtl.com for hundreds of local entrepreneur profiles since 2009. Thanks, Mike. See you next week.
Thanks, Dan.
This has been a production of TNKR Media. Good talk.